Hello, podcast listeners. You are now listening to the Coffee, Health, and Science Podcast. I'm your host, Jordan River, and I want to thank you for tuning in today for another episode of Coffee News. That's right, and we have Dr. Coffee back on the line. How you doing, my friend?
Oh, it's another day above ground, living the dream and drinking coffee.
I love it. I'm going to fire up some Pocket Purity as soon as we get off the air here. Loving Pocket Purity. Before we get started, share this show. Always, I forgot to say that. Make sure you're subscribed. Give us a good rating and review. It sure helps us out, everybody. Dr. Coffee, what's going on in your world, my friend? How is the East Coast? How is your coffee today?
My coffee today is just wonderful. I ground some dark roast, Purity, of course, and made cold brew yesterday and opened it up and drained it out and cleaned it up and been sipping it all day long. I don't know why they call it a concentrate. I don't dilute it.
You know, we've been getting hit up a lot since that last episode where you talked about cold brew. Lots of people trying that method and really enjoying it, and enjoying it for the low acidity. I think you really shocked a lot of people when you talked about the acid reduction. And I literally got 3 messages just within a few, maybe 24 hours of dropping that episode, all along the similar lines. Very interesting stuff, Dr. Coffee.
I love cold brew. I still think cold brew is to die for. It's fabulous, and I am glad you had some response from people who were willing to try our cold brew recipe. And I got to tell you that since the last episode, I did 2 other tests. I brought out my percolator.
Oh.
You don't even know what a percolator is. You're too young.
I don't know what a percolator is. Is that like one of those, when I was doing the coffee history on on Beethoven, he used like a balloon siphon? Are we going back that far, Dr. Coffee? Is that a percolator?
Well, no, but that was number 2 is I brought out a siphon machine.
Wow, glad I brought that up.
So I have had a week of percolated coffee.
Wow.
And siphon coffee. And I've got to tell you, I was surprised how good they both are.
Oh my gosh. So we're going to do a follow-up to brewing. So maybe we'll deep dive into those, a little tease there. So glad to have you back on as a regular guest, Dr. Coffee. The podcast is not the same without you, my friend.
Well, I'm here. We've got some fun things to talk to about today.
Yeah, seriously. And one you already brought up, the first episode that I want to cover in today's Coffee News. I wanted to dive into this because you touched on it briefly. But I'm so excited about these coffee ground shoes. That's right, recycled coffee ground shoes. This article is titled "A Wearable Roast. Footwear Company Launches Shoes Made from Spent Coffee Grounds." And this is exactly what you would think. They take the coffee grounds and they make it into this kind of, what is the material called? It's like a plasticky material, but it's a good shoe rubber, basically. And the inside sole and the outside sole are made of recycled coffee grounds. Now, this specific company is called Expressol, and I think this is one of the ones you brought up. They're pretty stylish, too, I have to say. They look pretty comfortable, and they look very stylish.
Yeah, so what's neat about Expressol, and I first heard about them from Kickstarter, it's with an X, Xpresole. A lot of people like shoes like Skechers or the new On running shoes, On Cloud.
Right.
And they're made with a man-made upper. Skechers, boast that they fit great and you can throw them in the washing machine and so on and so forth. That's great, but what they're really recycling there is plastic.
Oh, okay.
What Expressol is doing is taking spent coffee grounds and using a process to turn them into footwear. They're waterproof. They're very light. You can hold them. They weigh nothing.
That's insane.
And they're comfortable.
That's really, really wild. Yeah, and they have kind of like more of like a Van slip-on style. Definitely more, I would say, like modern look. So definitely check out Expressol if you're into this. And I even understand they even smell a little bit like coffee when you take them out of the box.
Yes, they do.
That is so wild.
So let me just give you a little bit of statistics on it. We have about 850 billion cups of coffee every year in this country.
Jesus.
huge amount of waste,
Yeah.
right? Because the coffee, first of all, it releases methane, which is a gas that's way worse than CO2 for our climate.
Mm.
And then you have the spent coffee grounds, which just go into recycling somewhere.
Tons of it,
There's
I'd
nobody
imagine.
really doing a great job of composting coffee grounds.
Capturing it, unless it's on a personal level. I think that's why that appeals to people so much. But it would almost be more beneficial if we could harness it on a larger scale. But sorry, continue.
No, what you said is great because I remember when Purity came out with their pods.
Yeah.
The bragging rights where they were one of the first pods ever that was recyclable.
Right.
The problem is that you had to open them up and get rid of the coffee that's
Rinse it
recycle.
out.
Most
Yeah.
people didn't. And then you still got the coffee to spend grounds. So most of these other products are made, like Skechers, are made from plastic and petroleum-based things. So with recycled coffee grounds, you're able to replace at least 30 to 40% of that, because the coffee grounds can go into the sole, the upper sole, the insole, all parts of the shoe.
I want to kind of take a bit of a turn here, and I don't want to step on any toes on this show, but I was just having a conversation with a very passionate conservationist, and he was talking about when we were kids, Dr. Steve, we were taught not to recycle. We were taught the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, and recycle. In that order is what he was specifically saying. And unfortunately, I think what ended up happening was people just completely kind of threw out the first 2 R's, and even our recycling industry, you could argue, is a little bit industrialized, and there's like a lot of controversy there. We've totally forgotten about the first 2 R's. And in a situation like Espresso, that's more of a reusing than it certainly is recycling, but you're actually putting it into a brand new product. You're not just kind of starting the cycle over again. You know what I mean? You're creating more value out of the waste versus, recyclable is one thing, but what you really want is compostable. I think that's where Purity is moving towards with their K-Cups now, for instance. But like, if it's not compostable, if people think you're doing the right thing just by pitching your bottle a couple feet to the left instead of the right, man, I just feel like we kind of missed out on the first 2 R's a little bit in the past few decades. You know what I'm saying?
Well, that's a brilliant way to explain it. I know that there are all kinds of people in this country.
Right.
There are people that have a viewpoint that's to the right, the people that have a viewpoint to the left, people that are centrics. If everybody could just get together and stop the nonsense and realize that Mother Earth doesn't care if we become extinct.
Right.
In fact, she'd probably be happy. She'd miss the smell of coffee in the morning, but she'd probably be happy because we're not here skunking up her world.
Right.
So we've really got to take a stand on what we're going to do to protect Mother Earth and to make it habitable for people. And grinding up coffee, drinking it, and then throwing all the stuff in landfills is just not going to do it for 100%. Long run.
And then what maybe even drives me more nuts is when you learn about the potential. Like, all the environment stuff aside, you're actually wasting great potential. If you're gardening anything and you're throwing out your coffee grounds, big mistake there. If you could turn it into shoes, big mistake there. So I think it's also about the cosmic, like, wasted energy there. So, well, we're getting there, right? With companies like this, with, more advanced landfills, and instead of, just going to old school pile it up route, there's people harnessing the methane coming off of land. I think we're getting smarter slowly, and I think we'll get there. I hope.
I hope so too. But when we talk about our next topic, you're going to see we're not getting smarter. We're getting stupider.
This one's rough, Dr. Coffee. And again, I guess we're getting a little bit controversial on the coffee news. It's only controversial because we try to stay out of other people's business so much, but we have to cover this because people go crazy for this stuff, Dr. Coffee. This article is titled 7-Eleven Relaunches Coconut Coffee. Apparently 7-Eleven has this limited edition coconut flavored coffee that people just go crazy for. And it's no surprise that the coconut flavoring is artificial, I understand. And so I wanted to bring it up to you, get your take on it, and then just look through this article and see just how much of a smash hit that this product is, unfortunately.
Yeah, so 7-Eleven, you're home for fast and easy, is now making their coconut coffee available again for a limited time. And what they do is they boast that they take 100% rainforest certified Arabica beans, and that they brew them up, and then they add this coffee flavoring. And I think soon you and I should do something on flavorings and on artificial sweeteners.
Yes.
Talk about ways to change coffee taste.
Absolutely.
Why anybody would want to do that, I haven't figured out, but that's okay.
No, we could cover the whole gamut. I would love to talk to you about raw milk versus whole milk versus skim milk, artificial sweeteners. I know a lot of people are doing like agave. There's all sorts of different options. Let's do a whole episode on that, Dr. Steve. That would be incredible.
I would love to. Anyway, in order to give 7-Eleven some kudos, though, they have 70,000 stores in 17 countries, I think.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, about 10,000 here in the States.
And I mean, listen, they're popular for a reason. If this is your vice and you want to do this, I don't want to seem like I'm hating on anyone here. I just want people to be educated and realize what they're putting into their body. Dr. Sanjeev Chopra has talked about what these artificial sweeteners do to your liver and how it's even worse than sugar is basically what he said. But I feel that as long as the consumer is educated, there's no problem with it. But I did want to touch on, what about this single origin? Oh, I'm sorry. It's a 50-50 blend of rainforest certified beans from all over Ethiopia, Rwanda, and then also Nicaragua, Mexico, Peru, and Sumatra and Colombia. But then in the next sentence, it says single origin. Are they all over the place here? I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. So like I said, I was going to give kudos to 7-Eleven because they have this goals that they've set for corporate responsibility. And they said that's going to lead to a 20% reduction in energy and packaging footprint by 2025. So I would like to applaud them that they're trying.
Right.
But then they turn around and they do the same thing as when you go to the store and you buy Kona blend. And we've talked about that in a different podcast.
Yeah, and a lawsuit over it eventually. That's right.
Exactly. So what they're doing is they have a 50-50 blend of Rainforest Alliance certified Arabica beans, and then it's 50-50. So 50% of it is from other places. I don't really understand the press release.
Yeah, that doesn't
make
right.
any sense to me.
It seems like they contradict themselves in the same sentence. And they also have like 7 or 8 countries listed there. Because listen, you can't listen, Dr. Steve, it's like you said, you got to pick a lane here. You can't be a mega corporation and then go single origin. You know what I mean? And we've seen coffee companies do this in our space, and it's hard for me to hold my tongue because they'll just say single origin. But you can look up that origin, look up what they produce, and see if they're lying based on how many people they serve. It's very interesting.
Yeah. So they're adding a coconut flavor to it. I have not been able to get the list of ingredients for the coconut flavor. They will not share it with me.
They probably have you blacklisted, Dr. Coffee. A traditional sweet and creamy coconut flavored coffee that finishes with lightly toasted notes. I mean, listen, like I said, do your thing out there. Just do your research first and see what you're putting in, because if it's addictive and you go crazy for it, it might not be the best for your body. I don't know.
That is right. So let's talk about sweeteners and flavors on a podcast soon.
Definitely. Yeah. Stay tuned for that, listeners. That's going to be a good one. Deep dive into that one. This next article is rather interesting. Wow. Really, really interesting. It's from The Star. It's titled "Coffee Maker Roasted for Producing Fake Product in Cambodia." This is wild. It seems like there was a Cambodian coffee producer that was stepping on his beans like some sort of street hustler. They found bags of soybeans, they found bags of lower grade coffee beans, and it seems like he was kind of mixing them in, like I said, cutting it, stepping on it a little bit. But they also found strange, I think probably for aroma to try to bring out different flavors that weren't there. Strange ingredients like soy sauce, butter, MSG, which has like that umami flavor, I believe, soybeans, and all sorts of stuff. What do you make of this crazy article?
So this is a case in which somebody is trying to stretch the fabric of their coffee. What they're really trying to do is figure out a cheaper way to be able to sell their coffee using things like soybeans as part of the mash. And I think it's disgusting. What I didn't get is why they haven't arrested her yet.
Right.
And they also haven't traced it, so nobody's talked about where she's been selling it and how much has she sold. But they came up with a list of coffee, first grade coffee, second grade coffee, roasted coffee that she had bought, and soybeans.
Jeez. I mean, I can imagine soybeans being similar in kind of grain and texture. If maybe she was doing ground or something, like what does that even look like? Really, really interesting.
Yeah, it's because the soybean was so much cheaper than coffee bean.
It's wild.
So, sorry. In the mix.
So are they, in an ideal world, there's a coffee Interpol, and they go and they trace all the sources and they see who was sold what, and they inform consumers of all that. Is that something that happens in the coffee industry? Is that something that happens in Southeast Asia in the coffee industry? You know what I mean?
Well, it definitely has a lane. And if you're in that lane, like organic has a lane, if you're in that lane, then you get certified for stating what you have going on.
Sure.
There is no second tier lane. What I mean by that is people like this can make their coffee, and there is no policing of them.
Wow. That's wild. And it's also kind of crazy that I have a Google alert on for coffee. Anything coffee comes into my inbox, and I always comb them for these lovely episodes. Really one of my favorite pieces to produce, honestly. But what stunned me was I only saw this reported once towards the bottom of the aggregate feed, didn't come up again. I mean, I would like to see what happens with this, if anything happens at all. So pretty frightening, man. You got to take this stuff pretty seriously. If you don't want, low quality coffee, if you don't want pesticide laden coffee, apparently, if you don't want coffee that's been stepped on with soybeans, you got to do your research. You got to put in the effort and have a little bit of care when selecting your coffee. Amen. Absolutely. To that, Dr. Steve? Yeah. Love
Amen. It. Amen.
Okay. Anything to wrap up here? Should we move on to the last one?
We can move on.
All right. A little bit of a fun one to end it here. This is just silly. To keep up with social distancing, an NPR article titled, I'll just read you the title here. Toy gorilla arm comes in handy during pandemic to safely serve coffee. Ben Ramirez, a San Francisco resident who always wanted to open a coffee shop, he got to live out his dream by serving coffee to essential workers for free. What a great guy. Shout out to Ben Ramirez. But he didn't want to go out there in the middle of the COVID pandemic and start handing people things. I've had this problem myself, Dr. Coffee. I used to just pass out coffee everywhere I went. Now I'm very reluctant about handing people things. Well, Ben had a great idea. I think it was his father, actually. He said, hey, I have this toy gorilla arm grabber. Those little claw grabbers, but it's got a little fuzzy gorilla hand. You grab the cup of coffee and you can extend about 6 feet out and serve the coffee and still social distance. So I thought this was hilarious. And shout out to Ben Ramirez from San Francisco, helping the essential workers stay fueled.
And a shout out to his grandmother who gave him the gorilla arm for Christmas.
Oh, that's who it was. Okay. I love it. I actually Googled toy gorilla arm just to get a visual. And there it is right up there, man. That would be perfect for serving coffee. So had to share that to sign off here. Dr. Coffee, my friend, that's all for today, right? Any final words here?
Yeah, I don't know whether you noticed, it went really quietly, but Pete's Coffee, JD Pete's, did their IPO.
Whoa.
And
Interesting.
they were valued at $17.3 billion.
Holy cow, I did not know that.
And then their stock surged the first day 13%.
Wow. So Pete's was all over Portland. I just moved back to the Midwest not too long ago, but we spent a year and a half out in Portland, enjoyed our time out there. Pete's was all over Portland. I personally did not enjoy that coffee, Dr. Steve. Now, I got started on Purity, and I like basically only drink Purity. When I would drink Pete's, it would upset my stomach a little bit. Do you find that Pete's is a higher quality, maybe not like a super specialty grade, but like where do you rank Pete's, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, so before I started to drink Purity, I drank Pete's.
Well, there you go.
And their general governor, whatever that one thing that I like is from Pete's, I just think is a delicious coffee. But I like a darker roast coffee. I like something with a little more body. And I don't like something that tastes burnt like Starbucks to me.
Yeah, totally.
So,
yeah, Starbucks makes me really upset. Actually, my stomach gets real upset on Starbucks. I feel like Pete's maybe a step above that. But yeah, shout out to Pete's. Whatever you can do to raise the quality, man, raise the bar. Perfectly appropriate for coffee news.
Well, my friend, I'm off to go brew a set.
Okay, that sounds great. I love that sign off. Everybody who's listening, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you had as much fun as we did today with coffee news on the Coffee, Health, and Science podcast. This is Dr. Coffee and Jordan River signing off, wishing you an extraordinary day. We'll see you next time on the Coffee, Health, and Science podcast.